Today is April the 18th, 2017. We are in Redondo Beach outside the City Council chambers. Tonight, we're going to be fighting CCA, Community Choice Aggregation, which is the latest scam in Agenda 21. What they are trying to do is they are trying to circumvent the Southern California monopoly, which is not a good thing. We don't need a monopoly here in Southern California with our energy, but their solution to that is more government. So what they want to do is they want to create a brand new JPA to administer our energy. For those of you who watch my videos, SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments, is a JPA. So they want to create a whole new SCAG to administer our energy policy, and we don't need more layers of government. So that's why we're here tonight.
I am here tonight to provide you that status report on the possibility of the city joining the Community Choice Aggregation Energy Purchase Program. As you said, we were here on March 21st, so if we're repetitive, please accept our apologies, but we do know we've got a couple of new council members, so this would be great. In the background, back in 2014, the city was approached by the South Bay Clean Power Working Group about an idea of joining other South Bay cities and forming an entity to purchase and sell energy that all users within the combined jurisdictions. On January the 20th of 2015, the Council adopted a resolution to authorize the city's participation in the feasibility study for such an entity. Over the past 2 years, the South Bay Clean Power Group, with Councilman Horvath participating, has developed a draft Joint Powers Authority and business plan for the South Bay CCA program. So let's step back for a minute and define it. What is a community choice aggregation? It's when local government agencies form an organization for the purpose of purchasing energy in the wholesale power market and providing it to customers as an alternative to traditional investor-owned utilities, such as Southern California Edison. Existing CCAs in California have been able to provide higher levels of renewable energy at lower prices, typically in the 4 to 5% range, than the investor-owned utilities such as SCE. There are several primary goals of the CCA program. On the environmental side, they stimulate greater use of clean, renewable energy, which results in reduced greenhouse gas emissions. Financial benefits include providing stable, competitive rates to customers that aren't subject to future Edison rate increases. CCAs also provide energy customers with multiple rate options, depending on their desire to support renewable energy use. The proposed CCA for the South Bay includes up to 14 participating cities, including Torrance, Hermosa, Manhattan Beach, Carson, and Santa Monica as an example. Customers would be provided with a choice of energy rates based on 33%, 50%, and 75% renewable energy use. The CCA would be governed by a board of directors comprised of one member representing each city. Decisions would be made using a weighted voting system based on a statistic such as total energy load or population. The specific financial and staffing impacts resulting from the city's participation are not known at this time. It is anticipated that monetary and staffing commitments will be required during the formation of the CCA. Once it is operational, all costs should be covered by the program revenues themselves. We are joined tonight by Mr. Joe Galliani, who was here before. He's the acting chair of the South Bay Clean Power Advisory Committee. We're also joined tonight by Gary Garrow of LA County. He is the Chief Sustainability Officer for the county. Joe has got some of the slide presentation materials that we presented to you last time, and he'll be followed by Gary with a verbal presentation on what's happening at the county level. So with that, I'll turn it over to Joe.
Thank you, Ted. I just want to say, first off, congratulations, Mr. Mayor, new council members. It's a pleasure to be here at this meeting. I will try to be brief. I know some of you have already heard this. Councilwoman Barbie, I know that you weren't able to be with us last time either, so I appreciate the opportunity to tell you a little bit about our program. And let me start with one of the key points of difference between our program and any others in LA County, and that is that we started with our goals and objectives, and we think that's really important in a community choice aggregation program to know what it is that you want to achieve. And what we'd like to achieve are what we call the 6 commandments. We started with these and shaped them over the 3 years that we've been doing this. And it starts with our desire to get to 100% renewable power as quickly as possible. And we want to do that without using paper. And by that I mean we don't want to buy unbundled Category 3 RECs, renewable energy certificates, that were detached from the original renewable project that they once were generated by, and then sold to other entities so that they can claim credit for that renewable power. We don't want to paper this program. We want all the renewable power in the South Bay Clean Power Program to be legitimate and produced in California. We also are focused very heavily on local jobs, local investment, and local power generation. You can do a CCA program and buy your power from the desert at the cheapest possible rates and send it over high transmission lines to substations and to us here. But there are no jobs in that, and we don't get the resiliency and the homeland security that we would get from building out our infrastructure locally. We would like to be able to operate our local grid even when the big grid goes down. And that's what distributed energy resources are all about. We want to generate power and maximize the renewable energy power that we generate here on every rooftop that's viable and every parking lot that is appropriate for this. We want to take advantage of the great sun that we get here in Southern California. There's a reason we're called the Golden State. We also have partnered very closely, and it's unique in our particular program, with labor. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers are the folks that are going to be doing these big infrastructure projects. And we went to them at the very beginning of our initiative and said, let's work together and let's create this program from scratch together. And that's very unusual. In Northern California, they've had difficulty partnering together with labor. We have not had that problem. We also want to have project labor agreements as part of this, community benefit agreements, job training, job apprenticeship programs. The IBW 11, the local union, has an electrical training institute out in the City of Commerce. It's a net zero plus energy building, and they have a 5-year apprenticeship program that doesn't cost the students anything. They need a high school diploma. They need to be able to pass the MAP test. But if they do, they are then put on a pathway to a career, not just a job, but a journeyman electrician's career that can take them anywhere. We would love to give that opportunity to our local folks here in the South Bay and on the west side. And then finally, we're focused on environmental justice. Here in the South Bay, you know, we have some beautiful beach cities like Redondo Beach and Hermosa and Manhattan, but we also have Inglewood. We have Torrance, we have Carson, industrial cities that have folks that live right over the fence line from refineries and from other toxic operations. We want to help those cities, and there's funding available from our state to do so in programs like this. Next slide, please. Just real quick, these are the 14 cities that we have targeted and have tried to work with for the last 3 years, and all of these cities agreed to participate in the feasibility study that the county did. And you can see the big dogs, if you will, in this program are Torrance and Carson with the most energy in the group. And then on our next slide, we'll show you where we're at. Well, I'll let Gary do that. Since Gary wasn't here in our last presentation, I won't steal his thunder. Gary Giroux is our county's first ever Chief Sustainability Officer. And I want to, at this point, congratulate him, because you may or may not know, ladies and gentlemen, that today our Board of Supervisors at LA County passed a motion 5-0 to fund a CCA program for our county. And they'll be starting with the unincorporated areas and then inviting cities that they already have to join. So regardless of what we decide here tonight, the County of Los Angeles is moving forward with the Community Choice Program across all 5 districts. Next slide, please. So here's our progress, and again, Ted did a good job of showing what we've been up to. But our more recent progress is last year around Thanksgiving, we delivered our draft JPA document to your city and our other target cities. And that document is a draft that's designed to spur discussion. It's a first draft that we hope cities will respond to, yay or nay, and add their own input. We held a workshop on that JPA draft, and I know that 2 of your staff members were there asking questions and participating. And then we've been going city by city now to ask cities, as we are here tonight, to receive and file our draft JPA and our business plan, and to have your staff review it, analyze it, and come back to you with recommendations as to its merits, and to compare it with your option for joining the county program. We have an embarrassment of riches here right now. You have your choice between the great county program, the great program that we're pushing forward, and even other options on the table beyond that. So we've gone city by city. On Valentine's Day, we were at Santa Monica, where they voted unanimously to pass that resolution and study the plan. We were in West Hollywood the following week. We were here on the 21st. We were in Torrance on April 4th, where they voted 6-1 to receive and file our plan and to analyze, review it, and come back with recommendations. Next Monday night we'll be in the city of Malibu. We were at Carson Subcommittee this week, where we believe that they are now strongly leaning toward viewing our plan as well. Next slide, please. So what are your options with us? We're asking you to form a JPA with your neighbors here in the South Bay, as well as West Side cities that want to work with us. And we want to have that Joint Powers Authority, that JPA, run this CCA. We'd like each of the participating cities to have a seat on the board, and we think a board of 14 to 20 cities is about just the right mix. Yesterday we read an article in the LA Times about the problems that our county is having with the new homeless panel, where they have 50 members, and they're kind of hamstrung. They can't make any decisions, they can't move forward because that's kind of an unmanageable number to have on a board. So we're trying to avoid that, have a very locally based JPA board with members from each of our participating cities. So if you choose to form that board, one of the first steps in a CCA would be for us to issue a request for proposals and qualifications for the people that are going to do the power procurement and the data management and the back office services. Unfortunately, this is an exploding industry in California, and our options today for vendors that we can choose to do that work are prodigious compared to what they were 5-6 years ago when other CCAs were just launching. We want our board to obviously determine and approve all goals and objectives of the program. That's how you know where you're headed. We want to specifically pursue an advanced CCA model, and that's one that promotes these distributed energy resources locally. And when we're talking about those resources, we're talking about production of renewable energy. We're talking about the storage of that energy. We're talking about the CCA's ability to do remarkable things in energy efficiency far beyond what the utility has been able to do. We're talking about demand response, and then electric cars are going to play a big role in this CCA because we're going to use those batteries in those cars to store energy, and we're going to shift the time when we charge those cars from late at night, when we're currently doing it at the cheapest rates, to the middle of the day, when right now, ladies and gentlemen, California produces so much solar that we're dumping some of it and we're not using it on the grid. The prices recently in some auctions dropped to zero for solar because it's so prodigious. Finally, we want your board to hire an experienced executive director to run this power authority based on the goals and objectives that the board sets for that ED. And we definitely want to collaborate with the county's program. They've launched a program today that encompasses all of the unincorporated areas. We see South Bay Clean Power working with the LACE program, as well as a program in Long Beach and a potential program on the east side, another program in the San Gabriel Valley. We have 82 eligible cities in this county, and we can form 4 or 5 regional CCAs that can all collaborate together. Next slide, please. I'm not going to go through the top 10 reasons. We've gone through these before, but I'll say this about our program. We believe that local is the name of the game in community choice aggregation. Community is the real key here, and our program is a grassroots program that started with individuals like myself in Manhattan Beach. We then went to Hermosa Beach, where then city manager asked us to reach out to other cities and see if they were interested in participating in a feasibility study. We have built a grassroots working group with representatives from all the cities. We have representatives from the environmental groups. We have representatives from community groups. We've had electeds and staff members on there. We're your local grassroots choice. And we've been at it for 3 years, so we just had our 3-year anniversary. Next slide, please. So what's next on our timeline? We're asking your city and the other cities that have yet to pass this resolution to do so and study our plan and give it a fair hearing, and then let your city know if it's right for them. We'd like you to engage in that review, and upon completion, if you find our plan worthy, we'd like you to pass the JPA and pass the resolution that your city would need to join the other cities and form a South Bay Clean Power CCA. By the way, that's a working title. We assume that the board of directors will choose the name for this program based on what the board wants to call it. And then finally, we see customers starting to be enrolled in quarter number 2, and that should say 2018. That is not. We won't be enrolling anybody in the second quarter this year.
We're ambitious.
Yes. Next slide, please. So those are your staff's recommendations. We certainly embrace those, and I have to say we've been working with staff here since 2014. They have been remarkable. They have been bent over backwards to accommodate our initiative. They've asked some of the smartest questions of any city, and we appreciate Ted and Rob and everyone else in the city's time and help on this program.
So with that, Your Honor, I'd like to invite Gary from
Thank you very much.
Los Angeles County to also come and speak on what's transpired at their side. Gary?
Welcome.
Well, thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. And thanks to Joe for all the work that he's done and for bringing this program to everyone's attention. He's done a great job. I think it is important to focus on goals and benefits. We certainly in the County of Los Angeles have done that. We've been working on this program now for a little over 3 years. And the key things for us really go to the basic legislation. This is a program about providing consumers with an option, a choice. That's the choice in community choice aggregation. Here you can either stay with the utility that you currently have, or you can go with the new utility that's created. But providing that level of option provides actually a benefit in an economic sense, that there is competition, and with competition, better rates. And I think the other piece is the local control. And I think this is particularly important. Today, rates are set by the PUC up in San Francisco. Under a community choice aggregation program, under a JPA that's created, it's actually the elected officials sitting on the board of the Joint Powers Authority that sets the rates for the communities. And I think that really does bring things to a local level. The others are really, and these are things that we talked about with the Board of Supervisors today, is providing lower cost energy than the Southern California Edison can provide. And we actually, with our business plan, our feasibility study that was conducted last year, showed that indicative rates of about 5% lower than what Southern California Edison is providing. That was a year ago, so we asked our consultant in leading up to today's Board of Supervisors meeting to go back and look at current market conditions and project out what rates might look like today, and do that over a long term. How would we know it could be economically viable in the short term. Would it be economically viable 20 years from now, and how can you project? And going through that analysis continues to show that we can provide rates of up to 5% lower than Southern California Edison over the long term and make an economically viable program. And I think that's an important component of the program. Joe has certainly pointed out the other great benefits and goals. We want to have as much renewable energy as possible. We want to have it as local as possible. We want to build that out. Those are consistent goals. We want that economic development. So as I indicated, last year the board did, or last year we did do this feasibility study that was presented to the Board of Supervisors, and the recommendation, quite frankly, from the staff a year ago was we should go do this. This makes economic sense. This is good for our businesses and customers move forward. And the board said we love the idea, but we want to do this together with cities throughout the region. We don't want to just go it alone as the county. We actually want a regional program. We think there are regional benefits. And when you actually can enroll as many customers as possible, that means you could spread administrative costs over a larger pool of ratepayers and reduce those costs for each individual. And so that was a key goal. And they gave my office, I'm in the Chief Executive Office, I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer, the job of going out and talking with cities and developing a joint powers agreement, negotiating an agreement with cities. And staff from cities all around the region, we had almost 60 cities at one point in the room talking about the joint powers agreement. And that agreement was really every 2 weeks sitting down, talking through the issues. How would we create this agency? What are the key goals? What are the key important elements? And I don't want to focus on all of it, but I will talk about the voting because I think the governance is important. I think cities were very concerned that the county is a big entity and didn't want to have the county have outside influence. And in fact, when the Board of Supervisors gave me the direction last year, they said, go out and create a fair and equitable representation for cities. We want to make sure this works for everybody. And so the board structure that was created is a one-member, one-vote structure. The city of Redondo Beach and the county would each have one member on that board, and you would have a one vote. There were options laid out for the use of a weighted vote, but only in limited circumstances and with some restrictions. So it really was meant to be a one-member, one-voted board. And as we looked at the examples from Northern California where all those CCAs are existing, they have a similar structure. They have not yet once ever had to call for a weighted vote. Things are done on a one-vote, one-member basis, or one-member, one-vote basis. So I think that's important to remember and recognize that we really are looking to work together in partnership with cities. The action today we did several things. One, that the Board of Supervisors approved the JPA document that was negotiated among the cities. So that is now the document that we're circulating to cities, and we sent it out earlier tonight to your city manager and some of your staff to say, here is the document. We adopted the enabling ordinance that legally allows us to move forward with creating the CCA. The board approved $10 million in initial funding. So the county has said, we will pick up all of the initial costs to start the program. That $10 million is $2 million in administrative costs. That's the power procurement and the back office, all the things that Joe just mentioned, as well as $8 million to go out and actually buy power for the program. So we are now moving forward. We are hiring an interim executive director to start the program running. That interim executive director is the 16-year executive director of the Southern California Public Power Authority, a JPA of municipal utilities in Southern California, knows how to operate a JPA, knows a lot about the public power sector. So I'll just conclude with sort of our next steps. We are actively out talking to cities, just as we are here tonight, and again, appreciate the opportunity to come to say we'd love for you to join us, evaluate your options. I think you'll find that if you're interested in low rates, renewable energy, distributed energy, economic development, that can be achieved in a single structure. The structure we have provides you with a lot of flexibility. You can come in at any one of the tiers. We've opened essentially what we're calling an open enrollment period. We're used to open enrollment periods in government, of course, and said cities that join us between now and essentially the end of the year, all of the initial costs are covered through the county's initial funding, and the program will roll out. We're actually looking to start delivering electricity in January of this year. We're going to start delivering electricity only at county facilities. There's about 2,000 of them in the unincorporated area. And the reason for that is we saw that there were serious billing issues when Lancaster launched their program a year ago. And we don't want to subject our customers to bad bills. We've seen utilities not roll out billing systems very well in the past, so we want to make sure that we'll be the guinea pig. We'll take the bad bills if they come. We'll fix the billing system over that 6-month period and then start rolling out to customers. So again, we appreciate the time tonight. Happy to answer any questions you may have, and encourage you to adopt the resolution tonight.
I had a couple of questions.
Sure.
Could you tell us your name again first?
I'm Gary Giroux. Yep.
Gary Giroux. Thank you for coming, Gary. A couple of questions. What is, one of the problems with these big regional agencies, it's great, one vote, one member, that's fantastic. But the big problem we've had with a lot of different, especially county agencies, is getting a quorum and being able to, execute business. And I could see that being a problem in the future. Is there something in your bylaws that allows for business to get conducted without maybe having a quorum, or not having, you define a quorum in such a way that you can still conduct business without going long periods of time?
What we've done in actually in the JPA document, the bylaws have yet to be written, and that's the next thing that we're doing. But the JPA actually says that you may participate electronically, so that we could have people not having to come from Palmdale and Claremont and Long Beach to some central location, so the electronic participation to ease that. We've also said that all of the voting is a majority of the members present, not of the entire membership. Also built into the JPA is a recognition that a large board could be created. And it specifically says, one, there's an executive committee that was created. And so hopefully work can get done at the executive committee level and the finance committee level. But two, there's specific language that says if it's ever determined that the board is too big to be effective, that the JPA, the board itself has the ability to streamline the governance structure in partnership with the executive director and in consultation as to what that streamlining might look like.
Okay, so the bylaws haven't been written yet.
The bylaws are now being written.
Now being written. Okay, that's interesting. So you have an open enrollment to the end of the year. End of the year comes and you haven't enrolled yet. I assume you could still enroll.
That's right. So the JPA document again says that you can enter at any time. What it says is, again, that we'll cover the initial costs for anybody who does come in this first period. If you come in next year and we have to go out and procure additional power on your behalf because you're a new entrant that we hadn't previously anticipated, the JPA allows us to say you may need to cover those initial costs yourself.
Maybe this is in the yet to be finalized bylaws, but what is the exit strategy or exit opportunity for someone who got in and now wants to get out?
Again, that is in the JPA document. That's a question that we get frequently. It specifically says you can give a 180-day notice that you want to leave the JPA, the agency itself. And in that time, the agency will work to shed itself of any contracts or to sell any power it may have procured on your behalf. And if there are any remaining costs, it's kind of a hold harmless clause. We don't want the remaining members, if Redondo Beach is a remaining member, you don't want to be paying for some city that has left. But it will essentially say whatever that marginal difference is between what we procured the power and what we sold it at, maybe we made a profit on selling it, then there's no cost. But it basically says that there's a hold harmless clause and we'll do what we can to shed ourselves of those obligations that we undertook on your behalf when you joined. And I would say that you actually, as a member of the board, will have approved those contracts in the first place. So you may be seeking to shed contracts that you initially approved.
Okay, well, let me take a few questions from the council. Council member Embry.
Okay, so financial risk. I remember reading that there was a lawsuit in which, even though the JPA, according to the South Bay Clean Power, they said that the JPA will be liable for repayment, not the local government. But I thought, and maybe Mr. Webb would actually know this, there was a lawsuit that said that that wasn't true, that when somebody sued, they ended up the city was liable. Do you know anything about that?
I'm not certain if this is the lawsuit you're talking about, but I believe there is currently a claim by CalPERS against the JPA that was set up by a number of member cities, and the employees of that JPA, which is now defunct, were made members of CalPERS, and so CalPERS is going after the member cities for the monies that are due to CalPERS for the underfunded retirement.
That's what it was. And so how do we, how have you fixed it so that that wouldn't happen to us?
Well, I think this is a test case, right? It hasn't been decided. There has been long-standing history that there is a firewall between the JPA and the member agencies. This case is testing that.
Okay. And then only a 5% reduction in cost for residents, that doesn't seem like a lot.
I guess that depends on where you stand. If you're a business and your electricity bill is $50,000 a month, that probably adds up.
Okay, and then so the whole point of this is to be able to get new renewable resources, right? And so we're kind of a built-out city, and so you mentioned that it would be to provide more solar in our area versus buying it somewhere else, like Lancaster or somewhere like that. So does the CCA pay for solar on our city properties, or what kind of a program would that be, or do we have to then invest in the solar?
The CCA would actually be the one developing those projects. So the JPA would come together and say, what is our strategic plan for how many new resources do we need and where and what's the best place, and probably put out RFPs and those kinds of things to solicit proposals on who can develop power in what locations, and we would evaluate those based on cost and effectiveness.
Okay, so but the CCA would pay that, we wouldn't have to pay
That's
that
right.
to that. Okay, and then I'm hearing a bit of a conflict in that Joe said that to make the JPA work right, that he thought 14 to 20 cities were the right mix, but you're saying there's going to be 60 cities in yours, and so it's just a difference of opinion on that?
Yeah, I don't know how many cities, quite honestly, are going to join our JPA. We didn't make it as an obligation to participate in the negotiations that you commit to our program. 60 cities have been actively or in some capacity talking to us about joining, but we don't know what the size of the ultimate JPA is. If I had to guess, it's probably going to be in the 15 to 20 in this first 6-month open enrollment period. Could be 20, 25, 30. It's sort of anybody's guess, because again, we haven't asked for commitments.
And what about the CCAs I keep hearing about that have lost millions of dollars? And what did you put into your JPA that would protect you from that?
For agencies holds, then I don't think any of the members would be liable. The extent to which JPAs that have formed and are operating are losing money is kind of a matter, I think, of some people's opinion, but the fact is that all of them are operating in the black and have been since they're, and have been, excuse me, I'm talking, have been since their inception.
Councilmember Lawrence.
Yeah, one of the questions I have is
Why are you lying?
Hey, let's keep the audience comments down. I mean, everybody's going to get a chance to speak here.
for those consumers that are willing to participate. Is it an automatic enrollment? Is it an opt-in? How does it work for each of your CCAs?
Under the state law, in order to actually make the CCAs effective from the outset, all customers are automatically enrolled in the CCA. If they had to go out and try to pick up customers, they didn't think it would ever actually get off the ground. But there are at least 2 public notices required in advance, 60 days in advance, 30 days in advance, to all customers saying, this is happening, you have the ability to opt out. And then even after the program is launched, there's 2 additional public notices that are required saying, this has launched, if you don't want to be part of the CCA, you can leave at any time at no cost.
And that's a letter in the mail, or is it various ways of reaching consumers?
So the legal requirement is actually a postcard in the mail, but we work with Southern California since so that if it would be in your bill as well as a bill stuffer. If you get electronic bills, like most people do these days, it would be in your email or a special email.
Because I would imagine the average person that you see on the street has no idea what a CCA is.
That's right.
And I didn't know until a month or 2 ago. So, I would think it would take some education on the part of...
And what we've seen in all of the ones that exist to date is that in addition to the minimal required public notices that are in the state law, all of those CCAs have actually spent money putting on public information campaigns. If you go, San Francisco launched recently, if you've been in San Francisco recently, you'll see bus posters and all kinds of things saying, did you know that there's San Francisco Clean Energy now?
So that actually leads to my next question. You have a decent relationship with Southern California Edison versus PG&E, which seems to be fighting this?
That's right. Southern California Edison, and we meet with them about every 2 weeks at this point as we're talking through the billing and transition issues. Southern California Edison, first of all, is not allowed to make a profit to charge on the power procurement charges. Mm-hmm. So for them, that's a straight pass-through. They don't own any generating assets. Right. So what you're doing essentially is taking away what is a relatively complicated function, which is buying power and matching it up to your load. And they said, if you want to take that on, that's fine by us. They've been very helpful. They've been a partner.
Okay. And approximately, by your calculations, if the county participates in this for the next couple of years, what do you anticipate the savings projected, just a ballpark estimate by the county, and maybe by the city? Do we have any estimates as well, too, the city?
Right. So you can imagine our electricity bill is fairly large. It's about $16 million annually. Okay. So if we save 5% on that, you can do the calculation. That's a pretty good chunk. Although I will say the Board of Supervisors has said for county facilities what they want, and this was in today's motion, they want as much renewable power at county facilities so that we're actually have an equivalent rate of what the current Edison is. So we're not going to get a discount, we're just going to get a lot of renewables. And that's good for me as the Chief Sustainability Officer because I have to help us achieve our climate goals.
Right.
What our business plan, the feasibility analysis assessed on a countywide basis, if all the cities participated, was about $20 million of savings to consumers, business and residential customers. annually, and that obviously goes back into the economy and helps in terms of reinvestment or new consumer spending.
Okay. And then another question I have is related to staff resources as well as startup. So it sounds like you're funding cities to join this. Mr. Galliani in the South Bay Clean Power is advocating the Humboldt model, correct?
Correct.
So the Humboldt model requires more of a wait and see who joins versus allocating the dollars from the municipalities. So there's a little bit more risk at the beginning of this versus your project, which is versus your CCA, which actually has less risk, probably less staff time. Would that be accurate?
There would be no staff time from any of the cities other than the staff time it takes to staff the individual who serves on the board. In fact, there's no staff time from the county. Once we get through this initial phase where the county is providing the startup services, we anticipate all of that shifting to the JPA to actually operate under their own staff.
Okay, Mr. Galliani, I don't know if you can clarify as well too in terms of staff time and any type of resources needed from the city to join something like this.
I think at this point, the staff time that is on the table that we're talking about is for the evaluation and analyzation of the plan and coming back to you with recommendations. We don't anticipate that there would be any more staff time in a South Bay Clean Power program than there would be in an LA County program.
Okay, great. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Barbie.
Thank you, Councilman Lowenstein. You brought up some of the issues I had. I do have a couple of questions, and bear with me and correct me if I've understood part of your planning correctly. So if we buy long-term contracts and for power, and these costs go up, and now we have people that opt out of the CCA, are we as a city stuck paying out of our general fund what we've bought?
No. So if individuals opt out, not at all. And in fact, we're going to have a mix of contracts. We'll have a portfolio. So there'll be potentially some long-term, maybe 10, 15-year contracts, some 5, some 1, some 6-month, and then there'll be a lot of kind of day-to-day spot market purchases just to true up against the load curve. But no, any member city or is not responsible, whether it's an individual resident or even, and we have this question in Torrance, if say the refinery left, would Torrance, the city of Torrance be responsible for the load that Torrance refineries have? Absolutely not, they are not.
Another question for you. Regarding the cities that were listed, you mentioned Hermosa, Manhattan, Torrance, Carson, Santa Monica. How many of these have actually committed? Because I had the ability to check with 2 of them today that had not committed.
And no city has committed.
No
We have
city has
not
committed.
asked any city to commit. I don't believe any city is committed to the county program yet.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up. I wanted to double check because I didn't want it to be misleading. I wanted to double check. Thank you. Does Southern California Edison also have a renewable energy program that is available as an option or not?
They do, and that's a relatively recent development. So I think as a result of the pressure they've seen from the CCA formation, they now offer a 50% renewable and 100% renewable rate. And we actually, as I indicated when we updated our rates analysis, we looked at what we could charge for that vis-a-vis what Edison is charging for those same rates, and there you see significant discounts, something on the order of 15 or 20% vis-a-vis the Edison rate for the same power.
And let me add to that too, that Edison caps that program, so it's not available to every single person that would want to be part of it. They have a threshold beyond which they're not planning on going above.
Thank you for clearing that up. I wanted to make that up. Another question for you. I was forwarded some information today in anticipation of it being on the agenda item regarding Lancaster and the savings for residential users of the power. And it turned out that for these customers, their savings was only $1 a month, except for the care customers that were subsidized, where they were saving about $6 a month, a little bit more. Do we have any kind of valid financial projections related? I'm looking for a return on investment for what is being put forth. Or is what you're proposing is that our city staff has to do this work to come up with these financial projections?
Well, I'll start by saying that we completely accept the county's financial projections, and since the power load size...
The 5% you mentioned.
Yes, yes, and the ability to deliver 50% renewable energy at that rate. That's important because right now Southern California is giving us 28% renewable energy. And when Gary is comparing the 50% rate, it's to that 28%. So that's a significant benefit for cities.
Trying to see if I have one more question for you. Actually, my next question wasn't necessarily to you guys, but was to staff. I'm a huge proponent of renewable energy and clean power and so forth, but as I've often said, I prefer to not speak in glittering generalities, but in things that I can execute. And one of the things that I'm concerned about very locally is the fee that we charge for residential customers that decide to use solar panels. I would love to be able to help those customers that choose on their own to use renewable energy to not be, is Aaron Jones here? Or maybe Ted would know. Anyhow, if we don't have the answer today, that's something that I would be interested in, because again, it affects us here locally, and it's something that can help the individual customers. So I just wanted to bring that up.
And I will say this, that the board has the option of instituting programs and elements of a CCA to help customers like that. So in Marin, they pay customers extra who produce more solar than they use. And last year, they gave out over $1 million in checks to businesses, residents, schools, and cities.
But as a city, I would like to encourage the individual homeowners to be able to do this instead of penalizing them with extra fees. But that's not related to your CCA, of course. This was just along creating the incentive for clean power and renewable energy within my city. Thank you.
Let me ask a question. You talk a lot about 100% renewable. What if you go to 120%? I guess that's what you're talking about. Then you can sell it back to the CCA or to Southern California Edison?
To the CCA, yeah. In fact, what Mr. Gallagher is referring to is in Marin, under the Edison program, you bank those credits. If you do 120, then you've got 20% credit for the future year. And you can always keep it in the bank, but you can never actually get it returned to you. And if you leave the Edison territory, it goes away. Under the Marin program, I think this is a model that we were likely to follow, is at the end of each year, if you have overproduced, they send you a check, and that check is actually at the retail rate that you pay for electricity. So they're not paying you at some discount like some of the programs, like a feed-in tariff plan, which I think is capped at 8 cents or something. They're paying you at the retail rate.
So you could somehow produce more energy than you use. You could actually make money on this deal.
Well, I was at a building today in Commerce, which is a net zero plus energy building. It actually deliberately produces more energy than it uses and puts that back into the grid. That's the IBW's training center out in Commerce.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Horvath.
Yeah, nice to meet you finally, Mr. Churro.
Nice to meet you.
So I haven't been following the county as much in the past couple of months, and I apologize for not making some of the meetings. But with the plan now, as it's looking for you guys, when you offer it to cities, is there the option for the municipality to join specifically as a municipality first before allowing the residential and or the business opt-in, or kind of like the way you're going into the unincorporated areas and your own county buildings first as like a test scenario?
Sure, there is that, although there is a sort of a time limit on that. We haven't set that time limit, but we would not want member cities participating only a little bit, but having a full vote. We would want them ultimately to have all of their customers.
Okay. And then, one of Joe's goals, right, is that as the CCA becomes profitable, much like Marin and the others up north, you have the option to, with any potential revenues that you're generating, to either offer further rebates to your residents, businesses, whoever's buying in, or to Councilwoman Barbie's point, to offer rebates in terms of incentives, to maybe put solar or, do your own
That's right. And in fact, all of those things are on the table. What we have said is that those are policy decisions left to the board of directors of the JPA once formed. Those are all things I think we're interested in and want to do. But we are not saying these are the things. Certainly the county is not dictating in any terms what the programs or policies are. We're setting up the governance and letting the governance drive the policy.
Got it. Will the 5 supervisors be members of the board as well as the independent cities, or will the county just have one seat at the table?
One supervisor.
Okay. All right, that's all I have for this moment.
Councilmember Grant.
Thank you both for the information. It's great to hear that the county is going to pick up all the startup costs for that CCA. Mr. Galliani, could you describe how the startup costs for the South Bay Clean Power version would occur?
Certainly, and it's called at risk, and there are companies that know that this is a very viable project. Thanks to the county's feasibility study, they know what the numbers are. We know how few people opt out. So at the Humboldt County model, the folks that are going to do the power procurement, or are going to bid on it, as well as the data management and other back office services, put up the initial money the same way the county is doing. In the Humboldt model, they had each of the bidding companies agreed to a 5-year payback period, and they work at risk because they don't get paid back if the program doesn't launch. So the cities are not asked to contribute any money whatsoever, and they suffer, if at all, from the revenue stream that goes to pay back the folks that put the money up front, in much the same way that the $5 million loan from the county will be paid back from revenue from the program as well. So there are similar models in that sense. We believe that the expenses associated with the at-risk model are lower than the expenses when you use a loan to fund the program.
And so just so I'm clear, so that if a city like Redondo Beach were to participate, there's no startup costs that we would have to incur from our general plan to get it going.
That's correct. That's what our business plan lays out right now.
So maybe this is a question for either of you. So we haven't really talked about energy storage much. We've talked a little bit about the build out of the infrastructure. Could you elaborate on what would be required and what would be some goals for storage of that energy?
Sure, I can start and under the state regulation, there's a requirement that 1% of load be kept in storage, so we would have at least that as a minimum to meet the state regulatory requirements. I think if we're really looking at a lot of renewable energy, you'd have to have storage in order to meet the demand curves. And so storage would be a significant part of the program.
I couldn't agree more, and when we talk storage, it's important to understand that we all know about battery storage. But battery storage is just a small part of how we store energy in utility scale. So there is pump storage. There's a solar plant in Spain that is storing energy using molten salt, which they heat to 1,000 degrees, and it stays hot all night, and then it drives steam turbines that generate electricity so that they're actually producing solar electricity in Spain 24/7. There's a wide variety of methods through which we can store the energy, and we need to. There's a thing called the duck curve, which we won't go into the details of, but in the middle of the day, when the solar starts to drop off, we need storage to keep the amount of energy going that this state and all of our cities need.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Okay, we're on more lights. Thank you, Joe, very much.
Thank you for your time today.
Do we have any cards for this item? I'm going to take the cards first. Everybody's limited to 3 minutes. And you don't need a card. There's not a limit. So if you didn't turn in a card, you still want to speak, no problem. But we are going to hear the cards first. So I'll call out the first name and then the second name. So if you're second, you're ready to speak. So we can speed this up.
Thank you. Chris Wilson-White, District 1. Aggregation is not necessarily a guarantee of the best rate. Just because the residents are in an aggregated community, that doesn't mean they're receiving the best rate. Rates vary from town to town and supplier to supplier. For instance, in Illinois, where they've already instituted this aggregation, many towns now have higher rates than those offered by the original utility or other third-party suppliers. Aggregation eliminates choice. Municipal aggregation is a throwback to the old way. Consumers didn't have a choice. It defeats the purpose of electricity deregulation. Deregulation fuels price competition and innovation. We could get locked into long-term contracts. Many of the aggregated municipalities at the moment are committing to contracts that remain in effect for several years. Those residents are locked into long-term agreements which often include increases down the road. And then the final thing I'd like to say is Big Brother is watching. In aggregated communities, the consumer's personal energy usage will now be accessible by government agencies. Through smart meters and aggregation, they're now able to track energy usage both on an individual and a municipal level. We need less government oversight, not more.
Okay, Senator Wilson-White, and then Gary Millman.
Hello. I, as my husband, we live in District 1, and we've lived there for almost 20 years now. For me, 46 years in South Bay. Community choice aggregation agencies are essentially government control of one of the key elements of our modern society, electrical supply. To be blunt, public power generation is an objective of mainstream advocates of democratic socialism, and it will be difficult to privatize electricity generation once it is controlled by government. There will be an uncertainty about future electricity rates. A board of appointed politicians will make decisions that will ultimately determine electricity rates for our community choice aggregation agency customers. The majority of this board may choose agency objectives, policies, and practices that may impose significant fees or significant rate increases for some customers. Community choice aggregation agency members may be compelled to prioritize climate change and social justice at the expense of maintaining steady rates, especially if investor-owned utilities cease to be a viable alternative choice. It is probable that local elected officials who desire to be appointed to a community choice aggregation agency board will be the most zealous about fighting climate change and advancing social justice regardless of cost, and their values will affect priorities and policies. Income redistribution. Certain types of customers, major users, for-profit corporations, properties with high square footage, may be targeted by the Community Choice Aggregation Agency Board to pay disproportionately high prices so that other customers, low-income households, properties generating their own electricity with photovoltaic solar panels, senior citizens, veterans, students, etc. pay very little. Advocates for various demographic groups may end up fighting each other over who pays for electricity generation. Certain influential corporations, nonprofits, industries, and institutions may lobby the Community Choice Aggregation Agency Board successfully for exemptions or breaks. In the end, residential and small business customers may bear a disproportionate burden of the cost. Election campaigns for local office may be infiltrated by special interest groups seeking to influence community choice aggregation. Electricity supply is a big business with a lot of power and money at stake. Powerful special interest groups will be continually positioning themselves to obtain a majority on the Community Choice Aggregation Agency Board. These groups will scheme to get majorities elected to local governing boards.
3 minutes is up, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. Pronounce your name again for me one more time. I apologize.
Strike 3. It's a record. Gary Linick, District 5.
Gary Gallego is next.
To me, this is just a more expansion of government. The bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. And I wrote down here when he was talking, it sounds like you have to pass the bill to find out what's in it moment. Right out of, I don't know where they created this stuff, the UN's, Sacramento, who pays these guys to go around these cities and do this? The county, the state? I hope you guys are smart enough to know that this is just another expansion of government, another controlling factor that they want to bring in and use against us. Tax, take, and regulate. That's what they do up there. Tax, take, and regulate.
Lee, can you sit here and tape me?
Gary Valero, and then Janet West.
Oh, I got to say for him.
Good evening, Redondo Beach City Council. Gary Galena, local resident. This is definitely a scam. I'm glad the people behind me realize that this is an expansion of government. What this is about taking a problem we have with private sector, which I don't really consider Southern California Edison private sector, but supposedly it is, and fixing their issues with a government solution, and it's a solution that we do not like. This is about putting the people of California onto renewable energy, which is all government mandated, and I should not use the word mandate because most of the language states that it's not mandated, that it's optional for the cities to do it. But the point I want to make is the free market does not like renewable energy. If the free market liked renewable energy, it would be producing it instead of the government forcing it onto all of us. Now, what everyone needs to understand is very important is this whole JPA scam. I think the people at home need to really realize what it is that is about to happen to them. Everyone needs to look up the Southern California Association of Governments. That is a joint powers authority, a JPA. That is an unelected board. They basically serve as the Parliament of Southern California. They are very much like the European Union Parliament. They are unelected, and they meet in downtown LA at 9 in the morning in the middle of the week when no one can go to their meetings. I went to their main regional council meeting last year in April when they passed their regional transportation plan. That was 52 mayors and city council members all sitting around in a room, and they passed a document that recommends a raise in taxes of $500 billion to recreate Southern California into this walkable, bikeable, pedestrian utopia where no one leaves their area and everyone lives in the same building that they work in. And there was no media there. No media there for that meeting with all those mayors getting together to make that policy. Well, this JPA, if created, will create another one of those bodies. You appear on the dais, you were elected to serve Redondo Beach. You were not elected to go to another city and sit on an unelected board and make energy policy for people in 13 other cities. That's what you were not elected to do. This is not constitutional at all. So please, keep that in mind. That's what's going on here. This whole joint powers authority. It's about creating another unelected board. So if you live in LA County, you live under the LA County Board of Supervisors. You live under SCAG. You live under SBCOG. And now you're going to live under this electricity JPA. That is 4 layers of county government that we have here in LA County. 4. And people wonder why we have the worst business climate in the country. Because there's too much government. No more unelected government. No more JPAs. No on CCA. Thank you.
Yeah. Janet West and then Carol Houghton.
President Trump said today that the last election means that we, quote, voted to end the theft of American prosperity. This CCA is nothing more than stealing some more of our prosperity. They've passed the California legislators have passed all kinds of new taxes. CCA creates another public agency with benefit and salary costs and pension costs. Do you realize how much pension liability we already have in the state of California? Nobody really knows because they play around with the figures. They weren't talking about the real initial costs for setting this up. In the agenda material, It said LA County, for their GPA, it's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars, not that $12 million that he talked about. In your agenda material, it says, quote, "The initial costs for the implementation of CCA shall be included in the customer charges for electric charges." It's all going to be passed on to your customers. I know some people who have put in solar energy, and every year the amount that they get credited for it decreases. And I bet you anything, all of their models show the top amount, but not what they're going to pay over the years. Plus, who knows what they're going to enact years down the road. It says right in that material for your agenda, one of the 2 primary goals is reducing greenhouse gases. One of the 2 primary goals. Okay, this is not about reducing costs for your customers. They have a goal of using 100% renewables in 10 years. What if the renewable energy industry is not ready for that? When I like renewables, I don't know anybody who doesn't, but the industry is just not at that level. When it is, our for-profit companies will be using it. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol Houghton, and then I believe it says Laiku, K-O-U.
Good evening, I'm Carol Houghton. As you're making this decision, I would encourage you, I would urge you to look at a real-world example of just such a GPA, just such a community choice aggregate. In your letter of introduction, you have on page 1, it says the South Bay Clean Power promises local jobs, local power generation, and local economic investment. These are the same promises made by the Marin Clean Energy. I will say that again. Marin Clean Energy. Same kind of thing you're looking at here. Now, after 7 years, Marin Clean Energy has found that they've failed on almost all these promises. After 7 years, only 2% of the energy is net renewable that is generated locally. 2%. Job employment. 3 full-time jobs came out of this whole thing. This part I don't understand about the $2 billion of local money exported to Shell in The Hague, Electric of France to Paris, Exelon in Chicago, Calpine in Houston, and G2 Energy in Atlanta. That doesn't sound very local to me. What is the scope of South Bay Clean Power and the Community Choice Aggregate? On page 2 of your executive summary, it says that there are no specific deliverables. Note that unlike the Los Angeles County Community Choice Energy, this report does not forecast the results of implementing a CCA in any quantitative manner. How can you forecast the renewable content of a program's energy portfolio, or what the rates are going to be charged to the customers, what it'll be in comparison to Southern California Edison's rates? How can you compare that? Without quantified deliverables, how can anyone make a decision about participating? Also, on page 7 of the cover letter, it states that SBCP may include the purchase of power from Southern California Edison. Now this is very odd, because the program desires to replace Southern California Edison with 100% local clean energy. Since SCE has difficulty attaining state-mandated renewable portfolio standard annual mandates, it's unlikely that Southern California Edison would like to sell to SBCP SBCP a portion of its renewables or a large hydro energy, hydro energy, since these two energy sources account...
Carol, your time's up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, darn, I had good stuff for you, too.
Like you, and Harry Johnson is next.
My name is Lee Koo. Allow me to speak tonight. I'm going to be talking about the Sonoma Clean Power greenwashing. Sonoma Clean Power is using a financial instrument called Renewable Energy Certificates, RECs, to claim that they are greener than PG&E. Without their use of RECs, Sonoma Clean Power will create close to double the greenhouse gas emissions of PG&E. So there you go, it's a lie already. RECs were created by splitting the product of a renewable power source into two commodities, the electricity and its renewable attribute. The hope and assumption was that the REC would encourage increased investment in renewable generating capacity. But the vast majority of the REC only add to the bottom line of the energy generator and enables big companies like Wells Fargo, Whole Foods, Vails Resort, and Starbucks to green up their power. Sonoma Clean Power Energy advertised that they provide more renewables but are therefore cleaner than PG&E. But the only reason that they achieve that is by using RECs. Randy Udall, a longtime renewable energy advocate, said that he was at the beginning when they invented this idea, and he is beginning to think that they should have strangled it in the crib. His chief complaint was that REC marketers were essentially becoming pre-selling indulgence, letting people and companies throw easy money at the problem instead of cutting back on energy use and installing windmills and solar panels. Why build when you can buy an REC for pennies on a dollar? How cheap are they? The typical household uses 500 kilowatts of electricity per month. REC can be purchased 1/10 of 1 cent per kilowatt. So REC enables the average household to think they are using 100% renewable energy for about 50 cents per month. On their website and advertisements, Sonoma Clean Power is marketing itself as greener than PG&E because they are supplying 33% of the renewable energy, and PG&E is supplying 20%. The additional 13% that Sonoma Clean Power is providing is through the purchase of RECs. So for SCP to be a 100% renewable option, 80% of the energy must be provided by REC for an additional cost of $10 to $15 per month. Since anyone can buy their own REC for 50 cents per month, SCP will therefore be charging their customers 20 to 30 times the market price. So, if Sonoma Clean Power cannot provide cleaner energy than PG&E, they should pull the plug on the project instead of wasting millions of dollars on startups and operational costs. With a large customer base, the startup cost could be $10 million per year.
Sorry, your time's up. Harry Johnson, and then after that will be Tracy H.
Mayor Brand, members of the Hermosa Beach, Redondo Beach City Council. None of the two gentlemen here tonight talked about the liability that the city has. I'm not talking about the ratepayers, the city has. And if you go to the Joint Power Authority Agreement, section 2.5.7, it talks about the liability the city has. This agreement this section allows an establishment for each municipal's financial firewall in which the municipality is not liable for payment to energy suppliers if the Joint Power Authority decides to invoke the clause. That's a big if. The financial firewall is only functional if the respective energy supplier acknowledges the existence of the firewall and accepts a JPA statement that individual JPA members are not liable for payment should the JPA invoke the firewall. There's another big if. You have to convince your suppliers to agree to the financial firewall, otherwise the city government is responsible for that contract. It remains unclear how remaining contracts might be spread across South Bay Clean Power's captive customer base should the JPA fold. So no matter what he says, it's in their JPA authority that the ultimate responsibility for the energy contracts is you guys. You're responsible. Section 6.6 of the Joint Power Authority Agreement states that withdrawing municipalities shall be liable for, and I'm going to quote, but as I'm quoting, I'll be using the word party, which means Redondo Beach, and I'll be using the word authority, which means the Joint Power Authority. I quote, claims, demands, damages, and other financial obligations for which the party may remain liable include, but are not limited to, losses from the resale of power contracted for the authority to serve the party's load in the CCA program. As a condition precedent to a party's withdrawal from the authority, or in the event of an affirmative vote to involuntarily terminate a party, the authority may withhold funds from otherwise owing to the party, or may require the party to deposit sufficient funds with the authority as reasonably determined by the authority and approved by vote of the board to cover the party's financial obligations, unquote. So what this says is, you're responsible for whatever the Joint Power Authority does. You, the municipality. That's section 6.6. You may ask your attorney to look that up. If you analyze section 6.6, you'll see once you sign up, it's going to be impossible to get out. So if the Joint Power Authority doesn't do a very good job or have financial problems, you have the liability. The city has the liability. Also, the quote about...
Sorry, your time's up. Tracy H. and then Harper Shaker. Shopper.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me this time. I'd like to speak to the conflicts. The business plan claims SBCP will be an integrated model that provides municipal members with, quote, a full suite of energy services from day-to-day power market operations through long-term planning to serve its municipal utility members. The draft business plan says that the lack of this has been a downfall for Marin Clean Energy for 7 years. Downfall? This is a false citation by SBCP. MCE was based upon an integrated full services contract model with Shell Energy North America, in which SENA acted as both an energy supplier and as MCE's integrated scheduling coordinator, ISC. SBCP claims that SBCP needs an ISC to be successful, while MCE has failed to deliver on many of its commitments to the Marin County community. See page 1 of this report. An ISC is not to blame for MCE's failed policy and management decisions. Thus, citing MCE's lack of an ISC is not sufficient cause to SBCP to attempt to distance itself from the possibility that SBCP may duplicate MCE's poor 7-year track record. However, business plan stated objective is to move away from gas-fired, gas-supplied generation. Page 18 states that SBCP's risk management, as carried out by the scheduling coordinator, may entail calling on various assets of SBCP, including peaker plant tolling agreement. This is gas-fired generation. Cover letter, page 3, business plan, page 21, calls for elimination of burning natural gas. JPA agreement, page 1 of 15. Establish an energy portfolio that minimizes the use of Category 3, unbundled renewable energy credits. Minimizes from what level? How about RECs? Business plan letter of introduction, page 2. No use of Category 3, unbundled renewable energy certificates, RECs, to achieve our 100% renewables goal. Which path does SBCP claim to follow? No use was committed by Silicon Valley Clean Power until its staff determined it would not meet its renewable energy commitment.
During its April 12th board meeting, staff consultants suggested SBCP revise its portfolio so that 50% of the clean energy was unbundled RECs Category 3 energy. Thank you for your time.
Okay, SBCP's greenhouse gas goals, but there's inconvenient truths. The business plan on page 21 cites California's total greenhouse gas emissions and states that the decarbonizing depends on 100% renewable energy. But the SBCP fails to reconcile that two popular renewables reportedly increase greenhouse gas emissions or undermine clean air. These include landfill gas to energy, which the Sierra Club unanimously concludes emits more greenhouse gas than it removes. Similarly, this report mentions that biomass emissions add harmful particulates to the air. A medium-sized biomass plant consumes more than 20 million gallons of water. Where does that water come from during drought? Based upon SBCP's business plan, metropolitan smog issues around LA are not relevant in the ardent pursuit of renewable energy. SBCP advocates patterning its implementation off of Redwood Coast Energy Authority. Their business plan identifies status of RECA's implementation and includes on page 99 the following text: process guidelines for development of a request for offers for local biomass power. Let's also talk about this authority's control over citizens. The plan states that SBCP's regional JPA governance is designed to support and enhance acceleration of this vision about how the region should be managed, supporting broad sectoral carbon reductions, not only for electricity generation, but also transportation, electrification, and fuel switching of appliances. CCIs are the only load-serving entity that can also leverage local control authorities to accomplish this goal. There's the money management issue, which has been cited by some elected officials. It's a false belief. It's merely a workflow mechanism. I'd also like to remind you that this GPA will end up being able to exploit and control land use and transportation decisions. It's not just about energy. Milton Herring was the one no vote. He was prescient compared to his colleagues in the city of Torrance, and he recognized that this is a burdensome bureaucracy with massive costs. You have a responsibility, a fiduciary responsibility to your citizens in this city, and it's not acceptable to toss it off to staff to try to cover it up. This is a costly program. I like to call it communistic anti-choice aggravation, precisely because it's another government entity, a lot like Obamacare, in which it's government subsidy and taxpayer dollars that creates this supposed competition. It's costly at the outside, it's costly at the end, it's based on false metrics claiming that it will reduce greenhouse gases when it actually does not. The last thing that the residents of this city or any city need is another government bureaucracy in which you, as a city council, will have reduced authority. And remember, the rates are set by the JPA, and you will have no choice in being able to change that. Doesn't sound like local control to me, because it's not.
So Lynn Rosenblum, and then the last card is from Joe Sullivan.
Okay. I'm going to ask maybe if the signs could come down because I'm a lone wolf here.
You can ask.
Even though I know some of these people really well. And we have a together that's important.
You really start the clock.
Yourself.
Your clock's already started.
Did we start the clock?
I'm not a man. So
well, whatever you are. I said man. That's
okay.
rude.
So, I'm Lynn Rosenblum. I've been a long-time resident of Redondo Beach. Over 40 years, I keep moving away, I keep moving back. And one of the reasons I keep moving back is because it's a clean city, there's a lot of cleanliness, and there's a lot of conscience. And I just want to remind all of you and bring the temperature down a little bit why we're here tonight. And that's because we're simply, and I had to write it down because I'm a little nervous after that we're here to receive, file, and review this plan. And I was so impressed with Councilman MD and her questions, knowing that she has these questions in her mind, but to keep going with them. Councilman Arby, I haven't met you in all the years, but again, all those questions were great. So that's what I'd say is let's just keep asking these questions because that's why we're here tonight. I encourage you, as a resident of Redondo Beach, to go ahead with this, to receive it, to review it, and take a look at you. As Joe said, if it's not the plan for you, but let me tell you something. I think we need to do something. We've got to do something. My son lives in China. I look at the weather every day. I see sunny, Redondo Beach. I look at the weather for the city he is in China, which I'm not going to divulge after what I just went through here. But the city says unhealthy, unhealthy, unhealthy air. We don't want to have that in our city ever. We don't want to, we want to be able to move to renewable energy. I think the great thing about this plan, and I know a lot about it just as a regular citizen, and it's physically responsible, but more than that, it's something I've seen in this city more than any other city I've lived in, and I've lived all over the world, and that's that it has emotional intelligence. And that's something we don't see in government, I guess, very much, or sometimes in chambers, and what you guys go through, hats off to you for running for these offices and being here, and I'm so proud to be a part of Redondo Beach and see this city council. But please, if you have questions, ask Joe, get with him. I know, staff time, everybody talks about staff time and taking time to talk to Joe. I'm sure Joe and the people represented here, in some cases I've known for over 30 years. They are not liars. They are not people. Yes, they're special interests because you know what? They're really special people. They don't get enough remuneration, resources, or anything to put the hours and hours and hours that they have put into this innovation to come up with this kind of program. We have got to do something. You remember what Los Angeles used to look like years ago with all the pollution, everything that went on? Is that what we want? Is that what we want to see?
Thank you, Lynn. Your time's up.
Okay, I apologize, Mayor Brand. I didn't mean to go over.
No problem. Thank you. Joe Sullivan. And again, that's the end of our speaker cards. And if you want to speak, just get in line and come on up.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. Thank you for having me. My name is Joe Sullivan. I work for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 11, as well as the National Electrical Contractors Association of Los Angeles County. We represent approximately 350 electrical contractors here locally that employ approximately 10,000 electricians. And I'm speaking in support of community choice aggregation tonight. We have found that when CCAs are properly structured with the right program elements, they can be very powerful job creators. And when I say the right program elements, I'm talking about a commitment to a build-out of distributed energy resources, links to apprenticeship to turn temporary jobs into lifelong careers, all the money for the program reinvested back into the program, community involvement, and then back office partners that provide the skills and resources to foster a growing CCA. The demand for large-scale solar projects like we've seen out in the Antelope Valley has caused us to hire hundreds of apprentices. Our apprenticeship program is pretty amazing. We invest approximately $35,000 per apprentice and train them for 5 years, at which time they have employment for life anywhere in the U.S. or Canada if they work hard for it and want it. They have full family medical at the 4th month. It's almost entirely privately funded. It's really a remarkable system that turns these temporary jobs into lifelong careers. We, IBW NECA, have been pretty involved with the CCA processes throughout the county. We've attended a number of meetings, and we have found that the program that most embodies the program elements we're looking for is the South Bay Clean Power model. So those are my main points. I'd like to close by saying right now the cheapest power in the United States is utility scale solar out in the desert. I'd like to add that municipal owned utilities, government, are on the average 20% cheaper power than investor-owned utilities. So there's some wiggle room in there, and that's why we're seeing CCAs almost entirely across the board providing cheaper power. In fact, Sonoma's rates are cheaper than the utility, PG&E, and they just gave back $1 million to ratepayers. Much of it went to school districts to buy their solar from them. So a lot of these CCAs are successful, some aren't, but they don't have the right program elements. They're not done properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Rolf Strepsenberg, District 1. Well, welcome to the Center Council of Electricity. This is a fun one. I would say at best, this might be an okay deal. There's nothing to substantiate that. We know that it's going to have fixed costs, it's going to have staff time that's demanded to go into it. Just tonight alone, you authorized hundreds of thousands of dollars in the consent calendar, and one of the claims for that is lack of staff time, lack of staff. So if there's a lack of staff and staff time, I don't think we have the extra to go into something like this. It might be successful like DHS. It might be a failure like Beta. Either way, I'd say 20 years from now, I won't be anything that'll even be talked about except in history. I grew up on a farm in Iowa. We had the Rural Electric Co-op. It doesn't exist anymore. These things come and go. This is nothing more than a forced co-op. And I personally didn't want anything to do with it. The Economist a couple months ago wrote a great feature article called Clean Energy's Dirty Secret, which talked a lot about all the downsides of clean energy. And with where it's at today and where it's headed, that path isn't sustainable. It's been so heavily subsidized and to get it where it's at today. Joe brought up all these great buzzwords like pump power. You don't have the geography for pump power here. You might get it up in the mountains or go someplace else and then pump, bring the power in from those places, but it's not a local thing for us. It doesn't exist here. There's a pilot program, I think, in Temecula, that's Temecula. I think for the average consumer, this is just going to be confusing for them and forcing them to switch over. And then is there a guarantee that there's no switching fee to switch out of it? Well, what if there's a $30 switching fee to switch back out of it? Maybe over that buck a month that you're going to save in 3 years, you might recoup that switching fee. That'd be great. This just does not come across. It's full of lots of buzzwords. There's no good meat to it. There's so many questions to it you can't even begin to cover in these 3-minute things. And the other thing that I noticed that as far as the fixed costs versus the savings, we're relatively low energy consumers compared to the others on that list. So our fixed costs are going to be higher per capita for us versus the savings. It just isn't going to work out for us. Maybe in a couple of years, maybe if it's proven out, something we should get into. Is it going to be more expensive then? I doubt it. It could be, but I think for now, the best thing to do is, the Japanese have a saying for when I worked at Toyota, says, do nothing for now. Let's wait and see what happens. We don't need to do this. We don't need to end up in another lawsuit because we got into something and then we don't want to stay in it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to just say that,
Yeah, state your name, please.
Mike Hunt from Orange County. Every time I hear clean power and renewable energy, I cringe because I can't think of a working model of it that has ever worked. And honestly, this CCA thing has boondoggle written all over it. And if I was you, I would just save yourself the aggravation. I would just not go for it. I don't think it's a very good idea. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I'm going to take on. My name is Edwin Uturdi. I'm a Redondo resident. What I'm hearing is the representative said that it's going to save money. But I saw one of the slides. If whoever's working the slides, if we can go back, it says one of the lines says that staff and economics unknown.
That's all you need to know.
Good evening. My name is Steve Collins from District 3. I'm a lifelong resident of Redondo Beach. And I'm here to speak on behalf of the South Bay Clean Power folks, particularly Joe Galliani, with whom I've served in a volunteer capacity in Redondo Beach for some number of years. We served on the South Bay Bicycle Coalition Board of Directors together for a couple of years. And it didn't take me long being around Joe to realize how brilliant he is. So if any of you haven't spent at least a few minutes talking with this man, you would be thoroughly impressed. politically, we couldn't be farther apart. Yet he's so influential to me in the things he believes in. I follow him pretty closely in his CCA work to hear how he speaks to other councils and the things he talks about, the working parts of the CCAs. And while all of that's mostly over my head, I completely trust Joe and his judgment on what this might do for our community. But more importantly, what it might do for all of us. I am profoundly grateful for people like Joe, who decades ago saw to it that we'd have catalytic converters and similar types of emission controls that probably suffer the same kind of arguments that we're hearing tonight. Financial arguments, feasibility arguments, and so on. But I recall standing on the schoolyard of Jefferson Elementary decades ago, looking towards the mountains and finding it difficult to see through the smog, to see the mountains on occasion. We don't have that problem anymore. It's rare. And so I think it's time for us to look beyond what might be a little bit of, a few pennies here or there, and stop fretting over whether something is just a little bit more expensive or less expensive, and maybe look toward leadership like Joe Galliani's providing for us to look forward to the future and take care of our environment and see to it that our children here enjoy the same kind of clean air and environment that I've been the beneficiary of for the decades that I've been here in this city. So I would encourage you to support the South Bay Clean Power in particular, because I know Joe and I trust him implicitly. And I would encourage you to look closely at receiving this and doing what you guys are elected to do, is vet this stuff for us, because we don't have the time and the patience and the wherewithal to do what you guys do. This is something you guys are good at, and I would really appreciate it as one of your constituents to look closely at this program and consider Joe's CCA. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Craig Cadwallader, and I'm speaking as a advisory member of the South Bay Clean Power Group since its inception. And first of all, Mr. Mayor, congratulations, and Councilmember Grant and Lowenstein, congratulations on your position. My background is I have undergraduate and graduate degrees in business. I look at this from a business perspective, and I also look at it from an environmental perspective. And to me, this is a smart, intelligent way to go forward. And Councilmember Barbie, you mentioned return on investment. In my opinion, if this was a break-even cost, yet we got clean power on it, that's a return on investment. And I think it's smart, and I think it's something we should strive for. You yourself appreciate clean power. And this is a recommendation to study this, to analyze the facts and look at what the truth is. And I strongly encourage the city to do that. And look at the numbers, look at the examples. Yes, there are examples of maybe things that didn't work as well, but things move forward. We build on that and do better alternatives going forward. I don't see the downside on this. I see an upside. I see an upside on potentially reducing costs, on going to clean energy sources that from my perspective, a healthy, clean environment is good for business, it's good for property values, it's good for tourism. I can't find a downside on that. And this, if it didn't produce the savings and did help produce a cleaner, healthier environment, that's worth pursuing. This is a smarter way to go. This is advancing to do something more intelligent that will serve all of us equally. The ability to opt out of this is built into it. So to me, the individual risk is nil. And I think that if somebody doesn't want to participate in it, just opt out. But I think a lot of us in the whole South Bay area would be better served by going with the South Bay Clean Power program or with the LA County. I prefer the South Bay version because it's more focused on us and taking care of our needs more directly, but either way, it's an advantage to everybody. So I strongly urge the council to instruct staff to go ahead with this analysis and to look at the facts and take the emotion out of it. And I think when you see the facts that this will look like a smarter alternative, and I hope you will go forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. With that, I don't see any lights on, but got one now. Christian, go ahead.
Yeah, so, what I would say to my colleagues here is, I've spent the most time out of all of us researching this and working on it, and I would invite everybody to do the same while we study it further and let staff do that and give us their unfettered opinion on whether it's something that would work for us as a municipality and whether it would work for our residents. Same thing with having the city attorney opine on the JPA. If there's anybody I want looking at a document like that, it's Mike Wynn. So, or two documents in this case, because it's the county and the South Bay Clean Power version. I find it funny that there was a lot of criticism about joint power authorities coming when we just approved a JPA, the item before, for our risk management, and not a single person got up and said, this is a bad thing. So, I don't know, I find that ironic. Okay, thank you, your time's done. So, it was mentioned that we have a fiduciary responsibility, and I think that is key. That's why we study things as a council or as a city. We look to see, does this make sense for us? That is being responsible from a fiduciary standpoint. I said it last time, I'll say it again. I think this is a no-brainer. I respect those people who think otherwise, but the California Public Utilities Commission decided that this was going to be an option well over a decade ago in the early 2000s. They saw where energy procurement was going to be going, and so they put it as an option on the table. So Southern California Edison has already written a white paper that basically says they are getting out of the procurement business. They are looking more and more towards community choice aggregation models. I heard a lot of interesting information about Marin and Sonoma tonight, but all the information that I have read and studied on Marin and Sonoma, they were profitable within 2 years. And you heard that they were actually giving money back to their ratepayers. So again, we're not deciding tonight whether we're going to enter a CC. We're deciding whether we're going to study it. And I think that we owe it to do that. That would be my.
Councilwoman Indy.
Oh, go ahead and let Ramon speak first.
Oh, thank you.
Go ahead,
Very plain and simple. I don't think there's hardly anything we do up here or in my previous life as a school board member that we didn't study first. And I think it is our responsibility to actually look into this. So I don't see what the aversion is to actually investigating something. Right now we're not making a decision tonight. So personally, I would agree. I'm not sure why we wouldn't at least take a look at it. I think it's doing disservice to our residents to not at least take a look at this.
Councilwoman Indy.
Okay, so I have a few more questions. Is there a public process when they do change the rates?
Yes, the public process would be the meeting of the JPA board. The Brown Act would require that would be a public process. They would discuss the rate change and then vote on it in a public process.
People can come from the public to
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and in fact, our business plan also calls for a citizens oversight committee, so there will always be members of the public as part of this process.
Well, I guess we can, it sounds like the study will go through, but if in the study, is there an example, will there be examples of consumers that are having to pay more than what they're currently paying?
No,
is there any
not
examples of that?
we have no knowledge of anyone paying more, unless, and I will state this, all of these programs have an optional opt-up to 100% where you generally as a resident would pay $5 to $10 more. If you wanted to go beyond the baseline of 50% renewable, then and choose to get 100%, you would pay a nominal fee. I believe the county has estimated that at 1% more rate than the Edison rate.
And so, speaking to that, people mention that other people will pay for others as opposed to kind of like, you know, the one side paying for the other sides to be able to do
There's
this.
no imperial evidence of any of that in any CCA that's been operating in California since 2010.
And how often can people change their differentiated energy options?
I'm not sure of that. That's more of a county proposal where the county is proposing that you might have 3 different tiers. Our proposal is that there would be a baseline of the most amount of renewable you could give customers and still beat Edison's price, and then there would be the opt-out. We're not anticipating multiple levels of RSP that way.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You got it.
So one of the speakers spoke about China and their unhealthy air. I was there, and it's a really interesting study that I forget whether it's the north or south, but one half of China used coal and the other half did not, just because of economics. And so over the years, they found that the ones who used coal actually have a 10-year shorter lifespan than the other half of the country. So it was it ended up being a huge social experiment. So I get that. I also was there when there was smog days and we couldn't go out to play, and I get all that. And I'm married to an environmentalist, right. And he rides his bike to work. We have solar.
You have solar, don't you?
That's right, we have solar. We have a Chevy Volt, and I don't pay anything for electricity every year. But no matter how much I tried to convince him, my initial cost to get the solar no way pays for the electricity based on what we were paying. And no matter how much I tried to convince him of that, he didn't care. It was about environmental stuff. So I get it. I don't agree with that, but you know, I get it. I understand why it's important to some people that they would rather pay more to have the solar.
We would say economically, your school system is a fantastic example of an investment in solar that's paying back multifold from what your original cost was.
Oh, I was there. I did that. I know.
Well, thank you for that. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I did. There's a whole nother conversation with that. So based on what I'm hearing, it sounds like this is going to pass. All right. So I would like to have a few conditions that would be in the motion. I'm concerned with staff time. It's taken me 2 years to get the conversation to go to the north on certain issues on this. So based on the fact that there's 18 cities they still have to talk to, there's still time, I would like to ask that this council then make sure that the Southern California right-of-way improvement must take priority over staff time for this. It just must. The second thing is that I don't think this is true, but the Economic Development Department won't be part of this discussion or part of this analysis, or is it just the Public Works Department?
I think it's primarily Public Works.
Okay, because my other... And the City Attorney's Office. Well, they don't do anything. I'm kidding. So Artesia Economic Development was going to be my other one to make sure that stayed as a priority. And well, I guess I'll save this for later, but Bill Guernsey from District 3, I think would be an excellent person to be the citizens on the committee that's being proposed if we do kind of go forward with that. What about City Attorney's time for this? Is there going to be concerns that we need to kind of put in there for that?
No, no concerns. Smart. We'll address it in the priority in which the council gives it. The only thing that we wouldn't do it based on council priority would be criminal prosecution goes first. It's the most important duty of my office under the charter. And second is active litigation, which we have an upsurge in. And so other than those, we'll do it on whatever the council direction the council gives.
Okay. There's no use of, certain things I do like. I do like that there's no use of the RAC. I do like on the county plan that there's no initial investment. And the electrical union coming, he left, was pretty good. And here's what I don't like. I don't like that it adds more bureaucracy. I'm still concerned about financial risk. When you go to study it, I really want to see what the different ones who didn't succeed, what they did, and what it is that this plan is going to do to counteract those plans. Because somebody mentioned, well, they made mistakes. They were going out there first adopters. And so they made these mistakes. I want to know what we're going to do to stop that. You answered about the PUC, public input. I'm concerned that we have to provide the financial analysis. I don't understand why South Bay Clean Power isn't providing this financial analysis, and why we have to spend so much time to do that.
Can I respond, ma'am?
Yeah.
We have spent $45,000 of our own personal money to have the business plan and JPA drafted. That's pro bono work that we're doing. We would love to be able to do the work of your staff instead. Might I recommend that perhaps the South Bay cities look at what our West Side cities are doing, and they're working together in a group with the COG and taking advantage of the Council of Governments resources to perhaps work together on some of these. The JPA is the same for all the cities. We have great faith in Jackie Bacharach and the COG and think they're a terrific asset.
I can't argue about that. Okay, then concerned about the city moving away from our core services, parks, safety, roads. I really think that any kind of work the Public Works Department does, those are all have to be major priorities, because this is not a core service in my opinion. And the CCAs are formed to speed up the push towards renewables. Concerned about, and I think the reason why it's slow in the state is because of grid reliability issues. And so those are my concerns, and I'd like, if you're going to do this, that those get addressed in the report.
I share your concerns.
Okay, Councilwoman Barbie.
Well, we've heard a lot of information from both sides tonight, and hopefully you have gotten a chance to see how we can constructively discuss our opinions and talk about different issues and how we feel about it. Without animosity and so forth, which is wonderful. So I wanted to say that first. So my 2 cents worth, because I asked tons and tons of questions, is that I see a wonderful philosophy, I see a very worthy goal, but I don't see the valid financial projections, and personally, I am not keen on having the city be an early adapter. That's my concern. But most of all, I do not see the reason why our city staff should be burdened with putting together these valid financial projections. They are overworked as they are. I'm constantly putting demands on public works and code enforcement and so forth for a lot of things from my district, which is what I'm supposed to do. And as we talked about, our city attorney's office is pretty busy these days. So that's my opinion.
Okay. Councilmember Green.
First, I want to say thank you to everyone who came out today and spoke on either pro or against the motion tonight. Thank you very much. The information is very good to hear. I also want to share some of the concerns that the councilperson MD brought up. I do appreciate those, and I share a lot of those. What I look at is, and I'm a little bit on the different scale, and I look at innovative ways to try to push clean energy, renewable energy and whatnot, and I have an entrepreneurial spirit. And I think that something like this, you have to try something, okay? I think for tonight, our motion to actually go ahead and study it seems feasible. We're not committing to it yet. We're also, we might actually, and I might like to ask is, maybe we join the county one if that's possible as well. And I don't know if that's been an option as well, but it might be something we take a look at. But the idea would be to look at this, study it, and see if it's right for us. And I'm pretty much in favor of that. So thank you, and thanks for your time.
My pleasure. Thank all of you.
Well, thanks everyone. I'd like to make a few comments. I appreciate those of you who spoke, the majority of you, bringing up all the financial risks. You know, this is new territory, and we don't have the answers, and we're not going to get them tonight. And then the decision becomes how much do we continue to study it, and I think it's a worthy thing to study. Ted, but let me ask you, and we asked this last time, what percentage of Public Works time and for how long are we talking about for you to evaluate? And will you be evaluating the county program and the local program as well?
Thank you. And
To the second answer, the answer is yes to the second
You'll be looking
question.
at both
We'll be looking at both the county and the South Bay program.
What percentage of your time and for how long?
From our percentage of time, I know last time I said 10%, maybe that was a little too conservative. I would really say it's about a 5% of our time frame during the next few months until we come back to you with a recommendation. Because it's going to take us some time not only to review the documents, but also consult with our adjacent cities in the South Bay and see where they're going, if there are concerns that they're having, because obviously this would have to work as a comprehensive program, not as a City of Redondo Beach South Bay program as well. So it will take us that 5% of time over the next 3 to 4 months to come back to you, probably by the end of summer and the fall, after we've consulted with all our local agencies.
Okay. And I will point out, there's a lot of concern here about another government agency setting rates and regulating what we do and how much is renewable and how. That's exactly what the PUC does right now. That's what they do, right? They sit up in Sacramento, they're appointed people, they set rates, they set portfolios of how much is going to be renewable, how much is going to be demand response, and all that, how much is going to be traditional energy generation. So that's going on right now. And it's very conceivable that we would be removing that power base from Sacramento. This was extremely successful. So I got to know a lot about the energy industry more than I ever wanted to know when we were fighting the AS power plant here. And yeah, when you look at the air pollution from gas-fired power plants, I mean, particulate emissions were going to increase 15 times if we had a new power plant put here. And those are particulate emissions less than 10 microns, which causes a lot of health problems. Doesn't show up in these financial calculations. Doesn't show up even in autopsies when a kid goes in with an asthma attack or somebody with a heart attack. It just doesn't show up. So the fact that it's not much of a money saver, or you might cost more when you factor in the health benefits and the associated costs of that, it's really not even a ballpark. That's it. That's if this all works.
That's how it's been advertised.
That's if this all works. So anyway, I don't have any heartburn with studying it. So is there a motion, or anybody else want to say anything? I'll entertain a motion, or nothing's going to happen.
I'm going to make the motion to receive and file South Bay Clean Power Working Group's draft business plan and Joint Powers Authority agreement, and direct staff to perform an analysis of the business plan, the JPA agreement, and the city potentially joining either South Bay CCA program as well as the Los Angeles County CCA program, and return with recommendations and per Councilwoman MD, done at staff and city attorney's pleasure, based on not pushing any existing priorities out of the way.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
So there's 3 in favor and 2 opposed. I think it's pretty clear who that was. Okay, well, I'm not going to veto, so motion passes.